Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to begin by thanking everyone for coming out tonight for the first of our artist perspectives. One works in Changing Course, Reflections on New Orleans Histories. My name is Brian Piper. I'm one of the curators of the show. If you haven't seen the show, I really recommend it. The works by all of the artists are phenomenal, and we've been witness to some really inspiring conversations about the histories of the artists we're addressing. To that end, we have a really robust programming schedule, so I'd like to tell you a little bit about that. There are also flyers at the back of the room when you exit and at the admissions desk. The next artist perspective is by Leslie Dill on August 3rd, and then followed by Katrina Andre on August 17th. The Picturing Us documentary series continues immediately following this discussion at 7 p.m. And next Friday, on August 3rd, we'll be screening Prejudice and Pride, about the tragic fire at the Upstairs Lounge. For Museum Month in August, just around the corner, actually next Friday that starts, we're kickstarting a series of community perspectives where we have invited journalists, activists, and neighbors to share their experiences of those histories with us here at the museum. The first one is next Friday on the 3rd at 2 p.m. The subjects of Willie Birch's portraits will be here to talk about their experience. And finally, on Friday, September 7th, I want to give a plug to our community celebration. In addition to a roundtable with participants of the Everyday New Orleans Project, we're hosting a celebration with free admission, tours geared towards the kids, towards younger students and teenagers, and then we'll have live music and food trucks from 5 to 9. Really, it's my pleasure here tonight to introduce Kasimu Harris, an emerging artist who grew up not very far from the room that you're sitting in. I believe Mr. Harris is going to share more about his personal experiences with you, so I'm not going to steal his thunder there. He might not tell you is that he's shown his work widely in New Orleans, in New York, as well as overseas. Harris's photographs have been published by the Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities, the New York Times, and by the Aperture Foundation in the catalog Dandelion, The Black Dandy, and Street Style. Mr. Harris was named a 2017 Louisianan of the Year, and he's a 2018 Artist in Residence at the Center for Photography at Woodstock. I should also mention, Kasimu is a talented food writer and very knowledgeable about food in this town, and he's really helped me find my way personally on that front. For that, I'm truly thankful. It's been a privilege to work with Kasimu on this project for Changing Course. We've had some great conversations about the history of New Orleans, as well as the relationship between art and social justice, so I think we're in for a real treat tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Kasimu Harris.
Hello, everyone. Hey. It's great to see so many people I know, and a few people I don't know, but it's great to see everyone. All right. So yeah, City Park's always special to me. This isn't part of the speech, but we grew up not far from City Park, so I have so many experiences in City Park. Once I fell in the water, the pond, my mom kept saying, back up, back up, back up, and I fell in, and I rode the train in my underwear. So that happened. So and then you'll see here, a lot of these projects that I do have been in City Park. I think because they're just really lenient in City Park. I do everything without a permit, so. So again, it's great to see everyone, and I get right to it. Warner Benighted was born on Valentine's Day, 2014. The scene was festive, but the mood was tense. She seethed quietly. The music amplified our silence. Mad enough to not talk, but not mad enough to move apart. So we remained seated at the bar. I can't recall the point of our contention. Perhaps she does. During the impasse, I cruelly sketched 4 or 5 students on a bar napkin. They were armed with instruments and glared defiantly at the viewer. I was tasked by the Honorable South to shoot an album cover for their album, Faithful, Honest, and Brave. The previous covers were illustration heavy and they sought something different. Since September 2014, the visuals of child soldiers percolated in my mind. At the bar, I coalesced those images with an idea of a choice of weapons, the title of Gordon Parks' book. I explained my breakthrough to her. It was an icebreaker. The oysters arrived, a second round of drinks. We scooched our stews closer. It was the moment where the sum of my life experiences aligned. I earned an entrepreneurship degree with minors in business administration and mass communication from Middle Tennessee State University, MTSU. While there, I joined Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity, and it provided a Black experience. That's me. It provided a Black experience at a predominantly white institution where people of color comprised about 10% of the student body of 18,000. Therefore, all of the Black organizations vied for the patronage of the same 1,800 students with a modicum of crossover. It forced us to think bigger. So before I clicked the shutter for the Honorable South's cover, I conceived the release/exhibition where the band performed in my Warner Benighted series would be on display. It would include the album cover that I scribbled at the bar. To me, it was a cross-promotional dream. But I think before I share my idea, the band decided on the album cover inspired by Clint Eastwood's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So I shot that album cover in April 2014. We all know that rough drawing became Warner Benighted #1 with the 4 students on the brick wall, and it's now the Changing Course banner at the end of Esplanade Avenue, resting between 2 columns while actively glaring at the remnants of a little Confederate monument. But this is the album cover. Does anyone recognize what it is? The Bayou St. John Bridge. So this was the album cover that I did, part of the shoot. And this is how it turned out. So I was pretty happy with it, to a degree. It was a little bit more illustration heavy than I thought it would be. But it was actually a long spell between conceiving Warner Benighted and executing it. I was fighting out of the abyss of underemployment. Things that paid immediately took precedent. I continued to conceptualize Warner Benighted because of an interview with producer Adrian Young and Terry Gross on Fresh Air. It was 2013 and Adrian Young presents 12 Ways to Die starring Ghostface Killah was just released. Ghostface, the iconic rapper of Wu-Tang Clan fame, and Young weren't in the studio together. Young explained to Gross that he wrote an entire script for an Italian crime vintage horror film set in 1968. Young strove to create another world. He also made photographs with vintage equipment that visually communicated to Ghostface the plot, scene, and the conflict that he would embody on each song. At the time, I was working on HBO's Treme, and I was constantly looking at scripts, making observations on set, and asking everyone a plethora of questions. So I downloaded a free script writing software and made an outline for Warner Benighted, but I didn't make the images until until March of 2015. And it was a deadline. So I wanted to get into a show at the Ogden, Louisiana Contemporary. So I just really hurried up. And at that moment, I called my sister, and we went to City Park in the middle of the night. I rented a generator, and she called a bunch of students. Well, some were family, so we cheated a little bit. And we started doing it. So the first 4 of the first 8 photos in the series are from that. But it was a deviation for me in a sense that I went to graduate school for journalism, and I'm based in telling truthful stories. So I'll go back a little bit. This is in 2005, and it was about 45 days after Hurricane Katrina, and this is about the first year of me really picking up a camera. So this is in the middle of the semester, and I'm taking a graduate course with a guy named D. Michael Cheers, and I went to Ole Miss just to become a better writer. And he told me, I was his TA for one of his photography classes, and he said if I didn't come back home to New Orleans, I would fail. I would fail the class, because I was done. I was just hurt. I guess that's the way I was processing my trauma. And so when someone tells you you're gonna fail and therefore lose your scholarship, you're gonna get on that bus. So here it is, this is 2005 again, about 45 days after Katrina, and I think already I kind of had a style, I would like to think. And then I'm just gonna show you some of the factual photos that I took, photojournalism. This is maybe a little bit after graduate school, so this is 2009. A lot of my photography was driven by curiosity, seeing something on the street and just getting out, taking it, immersing myself into what was going on at the moment. And this was just before Obama was elected, but he wasn't inaugurated yet. So this is on Louisiana Avenue. And this picture is really important to me because at the time, later, I was working on Treme and I was reading the scripts and I knew we had come to season 4 and I knew Obama would be elected. And for the first time they had Treme, I really wanted to be, I wanted a photo in the credits, but I didn't know who to talk to, I didn't know how to make that happen. So I was eating lunch one day in a writer's room and I said, hey, I have the perfect photo. And the guy said, let me see it. And he was like, yeah, I'm gonna make that happen. So this photo was important to me because I used it, I was an entrepreneurship major, to parlay that into my first solo exhibit. And I was like, this is gonna be the opening credits and this, and this. And it worked. But it was a good photo, but that was the importance of it for me. This is my mom. This is 2006, and this was our first Thanksgiving back after Hurricane Katrina. And just being interested. I think telling our stories within our own community is really, really important. Here, this was for the Kappa Alpha Psi Journal. They were doing people who were pastors or reverends, but also members of the fraternity. So this shoot was really going horrible. We weren't connecting. And at the end of the shoot, I almost wanted to give up. So I just staged him. And I said, well, let me see you pray. And that's how that came out. I didn't have, this is all natural light. It's called Kappa Man, Preacher Man, Dreamer Man. And I think it really illustrated all the qualities that he has and he was exuding. And this is important because it's me starting to move to arranging and directing things. So this is Jarvis DeBerry and Kelly Harris DeBerry. And this is on a streetcar. I think it's really nearby. It's the Red Line. And I had a concept in my head that I wanted to have a protector, the man, and she was pregnant at this time. So I imagined this photo in my head. And this is one of the first photos that I just imagined, and then I tried to go out and execute. And it came out pretty good. And this photo informed, hopefully the slides in the right order, the next photo. It didn't, that's not the right order. But this is still me trying to imagine things. And I talked about, I'm really interested in music. And this was supposed to be for an album cover, The Last of the Southern Gentlemen. And I love the photos, but it didn't work out so well. Because, I'll tell you why. So you go to school for business, you go to school to learn how to do something like photography, but they never really teach you the business of photography. So I had me and my big ideas, and I was like, well, we should do a documentary about the making of this album cover, and it gives you an opportunity to preview the music, and therefore it's cross-promotion. So I hired like 3 or 4 people, and I didn't tell him the price until afterwards, and he was like, nah. So, rightfully so, but the idea was great. But the idea was, for me, marrying profane and profound. I'm thinking about a Southern gentleman, but I want it to be in a real elegant type place. The trees, this is outside the Joan Mitchell Center, was indicative of the South. And I went back to my days on Treme. I called the set designer, and we found a piano, and Delphia did his thing and made the piano look even prettier. But that's what, just still moving into this direction of constructive realities. So this is the photo that was informed by Kelly and Jarvis. So this is Malcolm Jenkins, and I left out that I started doing style photos too. So this is a photo that is in Dandelion, the book that Brian mentioned. But the Kelly photo informed them because I was looking for the same thing. I wanted to show the love, I wanted to show the protection, I wanted to look classic and timeless. So originally, I was gonna borrow off of the Delphio idea and have them on the West Bank of Mississippi shooting to the East Bank. And what I wanted to do was have them eating at a table. And I see my good friend here, we're gonna do the same idea. So I wanted them eating at a table, and I wanted to show that profane and profound, natural or within nature, but really elegant. But I couldn't get any of that together. So it's the day of the shoot, and I'm like scrambling. So I was like, well, I could get a classic car, but I don't know anyone with a classic car. So the day of the shoot, I called Ted's Frost Stop on Claiborne. They don't know me from Adam. Within about 2 hours, they had me a classic car. And the guy didn't charge anything. But then later he voted for Trump. Yeah. So, but Malcolm, he played for the Saints, and now he plays for the Philadelphia Eagles, 2-time Super Bowl winner. And this photo has also been in the New York Times. It's in a Wedge collection and also the private collection at Cleo Thomas. So it's a special photo for me. That same day, I took this photo. And this is about the last photo. We did a bunch of different looks because it was style. But I was always thinking about what I needed to get out of the shoot as well. And so this is one of the last photos of the day. And I'm thinking about Garden Parks, his photo that he did with Ella Watson. And then, he referenced Grant Wood, American Gothic. So I was trying to tell Malcolm the idea, and he was like, well, I don't really get it, I'm not feeling it. I was like, all right, well, just stand right there. And probably about 3 or 4 frames, and that's all I needed. And funny story, but not so funny. We get home from the shoot, I hired a guy named Clifton Faust, and we're about to have some bourbon, and I can't find a memory card from like hours of shooting. The memory card I don't know where it is. So I called like a bunch of people, and we have people everywhere looking for this memory card. And then Jabari Greer, who was his teammate, came to pick me up the next day, and we're eating, and I'm like praying, and I was just like, I'm gonna just let it go to God. I'm gonna have to tell this man I lost his photos. So I get home after just dealing with it within myself. And also, because of the disagreement with Delphio, he was like, I love Delphio. I hope he's here. I don't see it, but Delphio was saying like, you're not ready, bro. So a month later, when this debacle happens, I'm thinking like, I'm not ready. So like I said, I have dinner with Jabari, lunch with Jabari. We go back to Algiers Point looking for this memory card. And then I go home, I'm ready to cry, and I look in my photo bag again. The whole time, the memory card was in the photo bag. So I never told Malcolm, I just gave him the photos. And I heard this is my dad, the Black Santa over there. So this is in 2014 when what's going on in society is really starting to eat away at me, like so many people. And I think this was a response to, I'm getting my dates mixed up, but I think Michael Brown had already been killed. And I'm thinking about the hands up, don't shoot. And deadlines, they do something to me, I guess. If I have an idea, when that deadline comes, I'm just gonna execute it. So, my dad, being a parent that he is, I think one of his siblings had passed earlier, and he went to the funeral. And I'm like, Dad, can we go outside and take some pictures? He's like, oh, okay, Kasimu. And so this is me standing on top of his truck and just really thinking about that. And the Swift, once I knew the street name was Swift, and I'm thinking about swift justice, the whole lynching thing that happens with police killings, particularly on men of color. So it's 3 in that. But it was, again, helping to inform me of where I wanted to go, or didn't know I wanted to go, but I was moving in that direction. Again, starting to stage things. And another guy who really helped me out with that is a guy named Vitus Shell. I went to Ole Miss with him.
Just a question, in your first frame in this series, did you know about the figure in the background?
I did.
Okay, so you placed that figure there?
No, I just was quick. Swift. So we're thinking about this kind of thing, and you know, so I did that. I think this was for like one of those Bombay Sapphire kind of deals, and I didn't win or anything like that, but it, you know, it informed me, just to reiterate that. This is 7th Ward Chess Club. It's probably around 2003, 2000, something like that. This is another photo of me just being curious what's going on. This is right off St. Bernard Avenue. And for a while, I was just getting these visions of men playing chess. I just kept seeing it, I kept seeing it. And I didn't act on it. So this is a Saturday morning, I remember that. And I saw these brothers playing, and I just pulled my car over, and I got out and introduced myself. I was like, hey, my name's Kasimu Harris, you know, I'm from Lac Rouge Street. I wanted to let them know that, you know, hey, you know, I grew up not too far from here. And I was like, I don't really know what I want to do with these photos, but may I take some? And they didn't even really look up, they just said yes. And I got their names. I can't tell you the names off the top of my head. The guy on the left, he's seen the photo. It was at the McKenna Museum, and that was a really good thing. So for me, it's important to not just have a gaze, but to name these people and get their names. It may be from the journalism background, but that's something that's really important to me. But this is just, again, being curious. Around 2009 again, you see Eric Waters right there? You see yourself? You're welcome. So here, this photo, when I took this photo, it was St. Joseph Night 2015, and I just had this idea that I wanted to hang out with Bo Dallas for the whole St. Joseph's Night, and this would be his first. It was his first St. Joseph Night masking without his father, who had passed, I think, in 2014 or earlier that year. And I saw him at Mardi Gras. I told him my idea. He was like, yeah. And so I shot again all day, and some people look at the photo and they ask like, what type of lighting setup you have. That's just all street lights and just some anticipation. For me, shooting second lines is just something that really helps build your reflexes and being able to respond to photos and moving situations. But more importantly, with this photo, I was thinking about gentrification as I was taking the photo. When we have the displacement of people with black masking Indians, what happens when they get priced out of the neighborhood? Can they still do the walk from the Big Chief's house to 2nd and Dryads? Will they get arrested for noise violations? Who's gonna come see? So that's one of the things that I was thinking about with this photo. My dad again and Grayson, just telling family stories are important. This is from that St. Joseph's Night again. Just really thinking about access. They're singing Indian Red. I think this is Mardi Gras. So I really want to get to the more on the water Benighted photos. So this is some of the things that, and this is me working in Mississippi. I worked in Mississippi for a year, telling stories of customary traditions and things like that. This guy, I had a chance to talk to him. One thing about being a storyteller is that you get to go in people's homes. And he owned a bar for years and years and years. And, but he was a longtime parishioner of St. Rose de Lima Church. And I was like, well, how did your fellow, the congregation feel about you owning the bar? He was like, well, they was all there. It's part of the Mississippi series. And I love marching bands. So this is for ESPN. So I think I had already started on this Benighted project, and I knew I would be in here. So just kind of like the, just showing you the range of things that, you know, stories I love to tell. Just this was being Swift again. I could see him out of the corner of my eye, and he just kind of came on by. So, another Robert Lee. So a lot of people try to make it vertical, but so you can see the bridge right there at the top. And this was anticipation again. Everyone thought he was gonna go one way, maybe go out towards the Superdome. In some kind of way, they just went the other way towards this bridge. And I broke out running, because I was like, the cops are not assembling in the right area, so I had to run around the whole K&B building with dress shoes on to get this photo.
Kasimu, sorry, where were you standing? How did you get that almost level?
Oh, I was on a corner, so it was I think I had an 85 lens, so it's you know, like a zoom lens. So here, this is me going more into social responsibility and responding to things that's going on in society. And then right after that, it'll be a lot of Warren Benighted stuff, and we'll learn more about that. Jimmy Lee Jackson, a deacon and activist, was killed trying to protect his mother from being beaten after a peaceful voting rights march. Jackson was shot in the stomach by an Alabama state trooper on February 18, 1965 in Marion, Alabama. He was 26. Henry Glover, a resident of New Orleans, was shot by a New Orleans Police Department officer on September 2nd, 2005, days after Hurricane Katrina. Then other officers refused to treat Glover. Days later, his charred remains were discovered in a burned out Chevy on the banks of the Mississippi River. He was 31. Walter Scott, a forklift operator, fled on foot during a daytime traffic stop in North Charleston, South Carolina on April 4th, 2015. The officer fired 8 rounds as Scott was 15 to 20 feet away. Scott was hit 5 times, 3 in the back. He was 50. Now, I guess that's an odd transition, but we go from death to life. So, children are our future. So, I'm doing a Warren Benighted. Both of those things were in City Park, and I told you I really like City Park. But with that, just briefly to close up on a Blackness continuum, basically I was examining or arguing that it was a new lynching, what was happening with the police, where black men were being killed without judge or jury, and with the advent of cell phones, we have become the audience that were once prevalent at lynchings. So involuntarily or voluntarily, we see these, and it handles us in some type of way. So that's what I was examining there. And I did that in between the 2 iterations of Warren Benighted. So I did some in 2015, and then I did 6 new photos for Warren Benighted for 2018. So they are pretty much in the order that you would see outside. I guess how I would walk through the exhibit. So I like collaboration to a degree. So I was out there with some parents, and you know, I had a script, like I said, and I knew I wanted people to go over the wall. When I first did it, it was a linear narrative. So all the 2015 photos were a linear narrative. And this is my niece at the top, and her mom was like, well, why don't you put the woman on the wall? And I thought that really added something to it, because to me, it meant that she had to get up there first. This is the struggle begins before school, and I'm really thinking about the peer pressures that students have even before they step foot in the classroom, and the negative influences, the neighborhood you have to walk through, and the people who may be doing things that are totally devoid of intellect or righteousness. But also it's a reference to the dismantling of neighborhood schools, where children often, depending on the school you go to, have to get up extremely early. And also a reference to the busing that happened in Boston, as well as other places where you went from minority to majority. So that's what's going on. And this was pretty much the last photo we took of the day. I rented a school bus, and I focused everything on the outside of the school bus, because that's the story that I want to tell. And I was telling everybody, like, high five, all right, see you later. And my sister rolled up, hold up. You didn't even shoot from the bus. So we just moved the light, and this is probably like the fourth frame I took, and I felt comfortable about it, and we wrapped. And this is the photo we used after probably 2 hours of thinking that something else was the story that I need to tell. Those photos look good too, let me say. Back to the Warner Benighted #1. And here, again, you see the reference to drumsticks, laptops, and I didn't do it for the first iteration, but because it was linear narrative, they had something started a little bit before that. So this wasn't, if it was a movie, this wasn't the first scene. But the way it happened, it worked well as it is. And I'm also thinking about the schools that were not reopened after Hurricane Katrina. Beautiful buildings that either been raised or turned into, some of them into condos. And I think that's a thing that can instantly flip the neighborhood into gentrification. Make a school a condo. Now we're into 2018, and I'm proud of this photo because I stepped out on a limb and shot with a 4x5, a film camera. And it's a much longer process. You don't see what you're gonna get. You have to take it, it's slow, you have to get the exposure really right. So for me, it was really pushing myself to go somewhere else. But this is called Race to the Top. And it's also another reference to these presidential slogans or White House initiatives we always have. War on poverty, war on drugs, no child left behind, so on and so forth. That's where I got the title from, Warren and Benighted, Warren and Stupid People. So, Race to the Top. And with this outline that I keep telling you about, originally I envisioned this a stadium full of people. But when that deadline started to come on you, you think about I did A, B, C, D, E, G. So it was easy to just get an empty stadium. And this is Berman Stadium. We went, and they were about to play soccer, and so we were trying to be quick. And but I think, looking at it now, it says more to have an empty stadium. And number one, we get to focus on the subjects, which are the students. And I think if it was a stadium, it would kind of distract. But I'm thinking about the emphasis on the test-taking, standardized test-taking culture, and in a sense, racing to survive for students of color. Like, education is the only chance for a lot of people. And this one is How Long, Not Long, the perseverance of AP Turo. And in my research, I read that it took him about 7 years. First, it started off with Bush versus New Orleans School Board. And they were trying to integrate the schools. That didn't work. And, you know, Thurgood Marshall and other luminaries and legal minds of the day came to help. But it eventually took 7 years to integrate the schools. So in this narrative, I was thinking about a protest going awry, you know, people standing up for themselves. And I really wanted to get into the courthouse, but again, with this outline I did, you had several ideas. If this doesn't work, then that. And this is something that worked. And they came by and asked us what we were doing, and they just left us alone. So luckily, I think this is the last photo I took of the series too. Thinking about the Underground Railroad, but you know, also not doing it. These children are having this non-violent coup d'etat because they want to learn. Earlier today, we had a bunch of students at my studio, and in another photo, you'll see some names like Toussaint, Marcus Garvey, Catherine Cleaver, and some people knew who these people were, and I asked every student in the room, about 10 students, where did they learn that from? None of them learned it from school. The three or four who did know, none of them were taught that in school. So part of the narrative, a transition going into the classroom. For me, I'm telling the viewer, in a sense, what's going on. But I like it with the linear narrative, non-linear narrative, that it puts some onus on the viewer, and you get to decide what's going on. This one is called Past Lessons Applied, and it's I shot this with a 4x5 again, and I'm really thinking about Teach for America. Teach for Us has two meanings: teach for us as far as the students, and teach for us as in a play on Teach for America. And we have some assorted pink slips representing the 4,300, or is it 7,000? 7,200? Yes, 7,200 public school teachers who were fired after Hurricane Katrina. And just what that did, not to a class of people, but also to the schools and to the students. So in this point, Past Lessons Applied, there's an earlier photo that you'll see. I'll show it to you. So Past Lessons Applied is a reference to this photo within the title. So they putting it into action, theory into action, essentially, that's what's going on. And for me, they're taking school charters, they're taking whatever they needed to take to try to dismantle this institution. And some of these were, when I taught school, I taught from, one summer I taught Romare Bearden's The Block a lot. And in this, it was a collage of 6 panels, and in that, he would have 6 panels of a Harlem brownstone. And in that, he would have cutaways into these brownstones, and he said they were like childlike X-ray vision, where we could see more intimately what was going on. So for me, some of these are imaginary cutaways to, could this be reality? Could it not be? Past Lessons Applied. This was McDonough Day protest for Eartha, which is a reference to my mother. The story about that is she was born in 1943, and she said she hated going to the McDonough Days, where John McDonough, past slave owner, also a board member of the Bank of Louisiana, who they had the Confederate money, he gave money to Baltimore as well as New Orleans to start public schools. And part of his gift was that students had to always go to his monument or to his grave and leave flowers. So we see this is directly across from Gallier Hall, and you see the flowers on the statue, the monument, you see the white children. My mother said she didn't like it because the white kids got to go first and the black kids got to go. And this was in May. And she said our flowers, we would be out there so long, our flowers be in wilted. So I hired a set designer, a young lady, Whitney Spangler, and she got to read this script. And this is how I envisioned it in my mind. For the students, the 32,000 students who didn't go to school that day. Rivas Ortiz organized a protest in 1954 to encourage people not to go, to buck this McDonough Day. So that's what's going on in this photo. This is a journey. I like that it pretty much ends in, I won't say an indefinite place, but a transition. I think the name of this photo is Black Liberation Migration. And I have a biblical reference that says, just speaking to someone was saying, I'm in a distressed place and I asked God to put me in another place. And then it goes on to say, if with God, I fear no man. So I go through really quickly and start getting your questions ready. These are some of the photos that I took for Warren Benighted, but are not here in NOMA. So let's go ahead and open it up for questions now. I appreciate y'all sitting there and no phones going off and no yawning. Y'all a captivated crowd. I think they enjoy seeing themselves, and it's very interesting to hear their experiences at school. Some good, not good, and sometimes I had a hunch of what was going on. It's been so long since I graduated from high school, but to hear that this is indeed true. And I think they just enjoy being a part of something and then coming to NOMA to see themselves. So they loved it. Howard. Okay. It's Dr. Howard Kinders.
My question is, how do you feel about your work being the center of NOMA right now for this exhibition? How are you
Man, I think it's an honor. It's not like, it's an honor. It's a big deal. It's not lost on me. We just had a baby, my partner and I, Ariel. It's just like I still have so much to do, so many deadlines. I've accepted a bunch of writing things, and it's just like, man, I'm busy. So it's like I always kind of move on to the next thing, but I don't think I've fully processed it yet. I know some of the history. I know that Barclay Hendricks was in his space before me, out there in the Great Hall, and then Lee Freelander. Both of those guys Lee Freelander was born in 1934, and Barclay Hendricks passed away in his 70s. I'm 40. So just in that, I think that part is the most mind-blowing. And just to see so many people here, so many people I know, so many people who are interested in the work, that makes me feel really good. And but I didn't go out and buy 2 houses and 3 cars yet. Rashida?
Where did you go to school? You went to school in New Orleans, right?
I did, for high school.
And then where did you get your photography training?
I wouldn't say I ever really formally studied photography. At Ole Miss, I took a documentary studies class. I concentrated in Southern Studies, and I remember when I first got there, I was like, man, what kind of racist major is this? But no, so it was a lot of documentary photography classes, but I get up under people, so like Tom Bennett, Seth Bonsali, There's a lot of people who Eric Waters, Gerard Mouton, I just always ask a lot of people questions. And I just did a residency at the Center for Photography at Woodstock, and I got to just be with photography for a month. And photojournalism has helped a lot. Rashida, you had a question?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Thank you, friend. So I was, the one photo race that top really resonated with me, and I was looking like, who did you get from that? And what came out for me, and I want you to respond to this with a thought to your daughter. What stood out for me was the emptiness of that stadium and what that conveyed to me about the experiences of our kids in schools and how empty some of that experience can be when it's so laser focused on that. And I was just wondering if you could add the concept that was missing beyond the emptiness, that would be ideal support for our children, ideal learning space for our children. What would that look like? Thinking specifically about what you want it to look like for your daughter.
Well, one of them was talking about who shows up, and as you pointed out, no one shows up, or very few people show up for academics compared to athletics. For my daughter, I would want a place to be free. I understand that there's some things that you have to learn, but I think sometimes you have a lot of busy work. I don't like the heavy emphasis on standardized testing. It would be a lot of culturally appropriate things that you would learn. And I think a lot of applied knowledge too. Even in college, I think too much of it is theory-based. So off the top of my head, that's some of the things that I would want my daughter's education to have.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm thinking about the role that your art plays or could play with the people and groups that are doing this reform work, right? That are doing it every single day, and how you envision that relationship, right? What are the ways in which it can be supportive and maybe even move the needle further than we might think? So some of your thoughts on that.
That's what I really want to do going into this project. And I really went to a creative change by the opportunity agenda last year. And it brought a lot of funders, activists, artists in a room together. And we did a lot of exercises like that. So I knew I was going to be in this NOMA exhibition. So I really wanted to work with, a lot of different groups. And I wanted to have some type of workshops to give back to the community. But they had this, they work with everyday projects, Everyday Africa. So I just knew that I didn't have to reinvent the wheel. And I'm telling you, a deadline is a thing. But, and I just wanted to concentrate more on the work. Like he said, just to have this opportunity, I didn't want to spread myself too thin. But I really want to work with a lot of these alternative groups here in New Orleans and to hear more about their experiences. So there will be a third and final iteration of that, and it incorporate more of things like that. Sometimes, I did say I love collaboration, but sometimes you just have to go with things because it's just like someone who drives and they just keep pressing on the brake. Not to say that a group would do that, but sometimes when you have too many ideas in a room, things don't get done. Brother Mouton?
Could you recount in detail the incident with Abdul Aziz?
That happened about a week ago?
Yes.
We were, my fiance and I and my young son Grayson, we were parking to come inside NOMA. It was opening night, and I was driving, and as you know, once it gets full, you can't pass a car up. So we almost to the entrance here at NOMA, and we're gonna come in and enjoy ourselves for Friday. It was the opening night. And I was parallel parking, but immediately a car just aggressively came behind us and started blowing their horn. And I had the worst headache that whole day, so it didn't really allow me to get upset. So just calmly got out of the car, and I was going to ask the person to back up. But it was a Caucasian lady, and she was an older lady, and she didn't have teeth, and she was already on the telephone, and she had her rearview mirror had some type of camera. And before I said anything, she, with the most terror in her voice, she was saying like, "Help, help, police, please help. They're trying to make me move, and they're trying to make me go against traffic. It's racial, it's racial." And she would roll her window back up. And I think I was just so confused. My head was hurting so much, and I tried to use my camera again, and it didn't work. And then finally, Ariel got out of the car and just backed up in parallel park. And I tried to call the cops, and the cops, it was just terrible, because I'm like, man, I don't want to go in NOMA and get drug out of NOMA, for something I didn't do. But from that, I learned that, one, I don't think I'll ever get out of the car again, because I think about what happened with Joe McKnight, and people keep saying that they were provoked, their lives were in danger. So I just give up the parking spot next time. And then also, I think certainly we were being targeted, because you just don't do that. And so that's what happened. And some people shared it on Facebook, and I came in and I talked about it. I said that she looked like Donald Trump's cousin without teeth, or Strom Thurmond's niece, or something like that.
Do you plan to interpret this in a photographic series?
Yes and no. Yes and no. I'm not sure. That Blackness Continuum that you saw, I know when I do that again, I wanted to incorporate women, the women who've been killed. So directly that one incident, I don't see it just yet, but not to say no. Hey.
In the speech for us photo, what was the significance or interpretation of the person in front with the put the vest on?
Oh, thank you. So Vita Shell did that Teach for America poster. Give him his props. But he was, that was my nephew Rasan Ison, and he was embodying Toussaint Louverture. And it also said, it's past lessons apply, the first of blacks. So when he wrote a letter to Napoleon, he said, from the first of blacks to the first of whites. So I think we have time for one more question. One more. Hey, I see you.
All right. I want to say congratulations to
Thank you.
for, like, walking in your passion and seeming like being in the right place. I want to know how much of the so you have the monument being chiseled down right now, and then you have this change of course banner right behind it. And I was actually working on a piece for another organization, and I used the shot of that contrast because you see this monument coming down, and we see the future in your photo. And I want to know, like, how much of it was foreseen, or like, is it just, a great stroke of serendipity that this show is taking place right now as that's being chiseled down? How does that make you feel?
It was serendipitous. I took that in 2015, and that's all hats off to the curators. They saw a connection, and they went with that. And they said it just so happened, like you said, serendipitous. As far as how I feel, I remember being at Ole Miss, and I worked at Square Books, and there's a balcony, and I would always look out and see this Confederate monument. And I took pictures of it one time and turned it into the student newspaper. And they were asking me, like, do you have an issue with us running this photo? And I didn't really think about it. And I thought about this today. I didn't think about it because I was so used to seeing these things that it didn't seem, I knew it was wrong, but it didn't seem like I could do anything about it. It was like a bully who kicks your you know what every day. And you just had no choice but to accept what was being given to you. So to see it being torn down, it's like Tina getting the best of Ike that one time. Thank y'all. It was beautiful to see so many people here. I appreciate it.